Welcome to From the Trenches, success shortcuts revealed by real-world innovators crushing it right now. I'm your host, Scott Hartley, and we're back with another episode packed with actionable strategies from today's most successful entrepreneurs. If you're tired of generic business advice and ready for real cutting-edge tactics that are working right now, you're in the right place. Now, we all know that marketing can be a drain on the budgets of businesses of all sizes. Whether you're doing Facebook ads, sending direct mail, advertising in the newspaper, or whatever media that it is, the costs can add up quickly. Well, my guest today has used viral stunts and other media strategies to generate over $100,000 in free exposure. Yes, free exposure for his businesses. So I'd love to introduce you to Nathan Baws. Nathan has launched and scaled 15 businesses, many hitting seven-figure turnovers. He's appeared on Shark Tank Australia in 2015, and he even holds a 2024 Guinness World Record for ice baths. Because what better way to prove your business chops than freezing your own? Nathan's approach to business growth is unique. He blends natural dopamine boosting, mindset stacking, and even data-driven strategies to help businesses scale. And he's a master at pulling off zero-cost marketing stunts that have landed him over $100,000 in free media coverage. And Nathan has co-authored a book with Tony Robbins and Brian Tracy, which was released in March, which adds even more credibility and depth to his expertise. And Nathan, I'm so happy that you're here. As we were talking a little bit before, we could go so many directions with our conversation today. We may dive into that a little bit, but we're probably going to have you back on another podcast because there's so much wisdom that you can share. But I'm excited to have you on.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. Thanks.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your background, because I mean, you've got a lot of interesting things that have, gone on in your life. You've got a Guinness World Record. You've appeared on Shark Tank. You've scaled 15 businesses. Like, how did all of this journey begin and get you to where you're at today?
Interesting question. With the background, when I was a kid, I was eating way too many potatoes.
Okay.
So that was the cause of where I am today. So basically, single parent, very limited budget, and we just ate potatoes every blooming day. It was just became a bit of a nightmare. So at 6 years old, I realized that I didn't want to keep eating potatoes, and I thought I needed to help mum, generate a little bit of money and maybe go from a potato to the occasional steak, and that was my motivation. So at 6, I started my first business. I had an attempt at my first business, and at 6 years old, you don't really know what you're doing. We knew that we wanted to make money. So we thought making money, this was my cousin and I went over to his place and I stayed on his farm for a week. And I said to Jerem, hey mate, by the end of this week, I want to actually have made some money so I never have to look at a potato again. So we sort of scratched our heads and thought, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to make our money? And we thought making money was literally you had to physically make coins and notes. So that was as much as we knew at 6.
Yeah.
Hopefully I now know slightly more than that. But so we got our permanent texters out and we found the closest thing that looked like a coin, which was a beer bottle lids.
Mm-hmm.
And we scribbled 20 cents onto every single one of them. We did about 30 of these. And then we sat back thinking, yeah, I think we've done it. I think we've now made money. And then the realization hit us that actually they don't look like any of the coins in mum's purse. So they're probably not going to fool anyone. So we thought, well, as a 6-year-old, what else can you do? Like, what are our skill sets? Maybe if we found something we're good at, we could potentially turn it into a business and sell it. So again, we scratched our heads and thought, well, we're pretty good at making paper aeroplanes. What if we made a paper aeroplane stall and sold our aeroplanes? So we sat at the front of a paddock in the middle of the country, in the middle of nowhere, on a very, very quiet street with a trestle table and all these paper aeroplanes, and waited for our millions to roll in. About 3 hours passed, two passing cars passed, and no sales. So we folded it in, but that was my first go at making a business. And I thought after that, I thought, wow, it'd be really cool if we could actually make some money out of the business. So since then, I've launched about 15. I think we're actually up to 17 different businesses, um, and learned a lot of lessons along the way.
Well,
So
right out of the
that's
gate, you learned that business isn't easy, right? And it's just because you build it, they won't necessarily come, right?
true, true. Yeah, there's a lot of lessons that I learned from that, which I actually apply every day in life to business currently. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow,
yeah, yeah.
fascinating story, and it's interesting you got started at such a young age, 6 years old, and but the interesting part is that you tried something, you had no idea what you were doing, but you were just hey, this is what's in my brain, I'm going to give it a shot. So
Exactly.
and that can be very very helpful in business, as well. So let's kind of dive into, a little bit on what I kind of term as guerrilla marketing. So how you used viral stunts and just kind of like the things that most people may not think of to generate, over $100,000 in free to media coverage. I'd really like to get, tactical here on things that can apply to businesses of really any type, and just kind of learn, what are some things that you found that have worked for you? How did you come up with these ideas? What does it mean to like, have something that's viral, that's kind of a marketing stunt?
Yeah, yeah, cool. I guess the reason why I look for viral guerrilla marketing stunts is because of the potato background.
Hmm.
Because I've been brought up with limited funds. You've got to start asking the questions. How can I make this work without spending money, and how can I make it better than I could by spending money? So that those questions have really shaped the direction of how I've marketed my businesses over the last sort of 20 plus years.
Hmm.
So I'm always looking for organic ways of growing businesses. I hate spending money. Love making money, but I hate spending it.
Right.
And the world's biggest tight ass. So I've always looked for systems and strategies that I could do different things, and it's just really a creative mindset that brings it out.
Hmm.
So I've in property, when we were in property in the UK, we were buying and selling properties, and it was just around the time 2010 where there was the global financial crisis, and the banks decided that they would much prefer to hold on to their money than lend it out. So I'd sold up my businesses. I'd done quite well in my early 20s, sold them up, went to the UK to purchase property, and because the returns were pretty good back then. And we just there was no finance available. So again, you have to start asking the right questions if you want to get the right answers. And it was all
Hmm.
about how do I buy more property without any money? So, um, so we found a creative strategy for property acquisitions, and in Australia, we brought it over to the UK, and we started by controlling a lot of property in the UK around London,
Hmm.
and that went really well. So, but some of the stunts off the back of that, we wanted to sell certain properties at certain times, and the market was very, very flat. It wasn't moving. So again, we had to get creative. So my sister and I uh, got these big yellow ugly boards, like A-frames, one at the front, one at the back,
Hmm.
um, and ugly handwritten texture all over it saying "Buy my flat" and our phone numbers, and um, and we put a payment plan on there to make it easier for buyers to buy. And we walked across Tower Bridge, which is in London. It's the most iconic scenic bridge with the
Right.
big, yeah,
Yeah.
and everyone just stopped and looked, and people had their cameras out. The red double decker buses pulled up just in the side of the bridge, and the drivers were sort of hanging out saying, "What the hell are you doing?" Um, And so, yeah, it got into the newspapers. I don't know how, but it got into the newspapers and it went viral, went global around the world.
Hmm.
Struggling homeowner trying to sell his property and had our phone number at the bottom, and the phone just rang off the hook for the next 48 hours, and we'd sold that property within 48 hours. So
Wow.
zero cost. And but I think with these sort of stunts, they're not scalable. You
Yeah.
need to put a bit of time into them. They have a certain level of uh, discomfort that you may well go through. The whole embarrassment side. But I think it's down to knowing your numbers.
Hmm.
So we literally said, well, look, if we sell this flat, we make £40,000. So would we walk across a bridge and embarrass ourselves for half an hour to make £40,000? And the answer was immediately, absolutely. I'll do that every day, all day.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I think knowing your numbers gives you a really good background as to, generating the motivation to do something a little bit crazy and think outside of the box.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, I
because,
assume that kind of in London, like, you said that, traffic was slowing down and the buses and everything were stopping. I'm assuming that, that type, we see that here in the United States, quite a bit, outside of, strip malls and everything, where they've got, somebody that they're paying that they're wearing kind of a sign or, whatever. But I'm assuming that in London at that time, like that was not something that was normally seen. So that really garnered all that attention.
Well, I think that's part of it. And, the UK is quite conservative.
Uh-huh.
We were also in a very highly tourist location, which people don't
Okay.
really go to when they're doing those sort of things. Additionally, there's levels of marketing that really just cut through. So in today's world, it's professional above how can we make it more professional? Now, how can we make it additionally more professional? And it all blends into a sea of sameness.
Mhm.
So we went totally the opposite way. How can we really make this stand out and not compete with those professional signs so that it cuts through? And so we had super ugly writing. There was spelling mistakes in there. There was all sorts of things that would attract it and make it real. So
Hmm.
it's like real people rather than corporate. We wanted to get it away from the whole corporate concept of, buy this house, it's blah blah blah,
Yeah.
and to personalize it and to stand out. And I think that's what you need to start looking at, because we just all go down the same track, and it gets so freaking boring.
Yeah.
And you just need to think outside of the box, and you can come up with some cool things when you do.
Yeah, I love the fact that you talked about standing out and kind of what you're describing is kind of now I'm very conscientious, I guess I would say. Like I'm not well, number one, I'm not real creative, but I also don't like to draw a lot of attention to myself. So doing what you did there is like scary to me. It's like way outside of my comfort zone, and I'm thinking
Yes.
about a conference that I'm going to in October, and I'm wanting to promote my services, hit the inbox and everything, and it's been in the back of my mind. It's like, how can I stand out as just an attendee at this conference,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
have strike up conversations, and like it's scaring the heck out of me because it's just way outside of my comfort zone. I'd rather be the fly on the wall than the center of attention. So definitely something that I have to give some thought. But I like the fact that you mentioned that we do have to stand out. I was attending a call today, a training session where they were talking about social media ads. And it seems like social media ads have really gotten saturated with video of whatever type that it is. And so now, they're recommending that you test out using what they call ugly ads. So it's,
Right.
basic text and, gaudy looking colors and all that type of stuff. But it's something that's going to be a pattern interrupt. It's like, wait a minute, like this is different, this is unusual, and that's kind of what you're describing with the
Spot on.
tactics that you've used.
Yeah, spot on. You just have to do things differently. I mean, we're constantly building our team, and we're constantly advertising for employees to come along and join the team. It is just incredible how boring the majority of the humans are out there. I mean, it literally puts me to sleep, the type of resumes that we receive. There's rarely one that stands out.
Hmm.
And when it does, it's like, whoa, here's a wake-up call. But it doesn't take much to do it a little bit differently, but you just have to go into it with that mindset. A guy I know was going, he's an investment banker now, but when in his early days, he was going for a job interview. And what he did is made up a video of himself with a puppet on strings. And it was saying, hey, Johnny is really good at pulling beers in the pub. You should check out his beer. It's really, really cool. And he sent this video into the pub and boom, straight away, he got the job. And it's
Hmm.
not surprising because we're all desperate for something fresh and we're
Yeah.
bored of the usual. So, as you say, that ugly marketing actually just cuts through because it's a pattern interrupt.
Hmm.
So, do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we're breaking this down for, for like, the small business, whether, it's a local service business, maybe it's an online, business, or maybe an e-commerce type of store, what are some specific things that they need to be thinking about that they can be, how can they stand out? How can they be unique? How can they have that pattern interrupt that's going to grab people's attention and at least make them, focus on that advertisement or that marketing for just a few seconds.
It all starts with asking the right questions. So, changing our mindset from being in the tunnel vision of this is what we do, next step, next step, next step, and pulling back and saying, asking the right questions. So, how can I make this different? How can I make it stand out? Just reframing the neural pathways in your brain instead of going down the track that always consistently brings you the same results and a billion other people are doing. All
Hmm.
right, let's pull back. What can we do that's different? How can we just throw 1,000 different questions out there? So what can we do that's different? How can we stand out? What's everyone else doing currently? What would be the opposite of what everyone is doing currently?
Mm.
So, triggering the right questions will bring you the right answers. But the
Yeah.
problem is we don't generally have the time to stop and think and change our thought patterns to generate some creativity. And it
Hmm.
all starts with the right questions. So ask the questions and the answers will come. Particularly when you're going to sleep. If you ask that question to yourself, the brain goes in when you're in that subconscious sleeping state, the brain is phenomenal. We have an absolutely untapped machine up here and we're not using it.
Hmm.
So nighttime's a fantastic time to ask the question just as you're falling asleep.
I've also
And
found that the getting when you get a shower, usually my best ideas come when I'm getting a shower. And of course, I don't have one of those right underwater pens to document anything, so I'm rushing to get my phone and record a voice
yeah,
memo or something.
yeah, fantastic. And I get it when I'm running, when I'm down the beach and I'm in that creative zone. And I think that comes into dopamine as well.
Uh-huh.
So that's something else that I'll talk about, but probably don't have time for. But dopamine is fantastic. The more you elevate your mood, the more creativity comes into your brain. If you're really, really stressed and you've got depression or anxiety or so much going on, it's very hard to be creative.
Yeah.
So whenever those issues come up in my business life, I try and get rid of them as quickly as possible because I know it's killing my creativity and my growth.
Yeah, it's interesting. The conversation's kind of meandered there because about the dopamine and everything.
Mm,
Interestingly enough, today, like before we got on to this podcast recording, like I've had a phenomenal like breakthrough this afternoon, and it happened after I got finished with a walk that I went on, a 15-minute walk, and it
awesome.
occurred after a call that I had with the client. And it started on one particular topic, and then I just kind of my mind just kind of like started coming up with all of this stuff, and I'm like scribbling as fast as I could to get it all written down. But like I have this amazing idea that I'm going to test and play around with, for engaging my audience through email. But like you said, it came from that dopamine that, from getting out from behind my desk, getting out
Yep.
into nature, and just kind of like, because I didn't consciously think about anything while I was on my walk. But after I got back, boom, it
Yep.
was there.
Yep. Fantastic. And that's all about getting into flow state. You may have heard of flow state
Hmm.
where everything just falls into place and it's amazing. It's like a miracle. Energy is really good, really high. All of a sudden, all these clients come to you, all the business is generated, you've come up with ideas, one thing after the next, really, really positive happens. And you can actually artificially stimulate on demand that into your life. And that's
Hmm.
one thing that I really love working on. And things like your walking and exercise is fantastic for getting into that flow state and stimulating the dopamine. And when you've got high dopamine levels, you see a lot more opportunities and
Hmm.
you think a lot more creatively and you act a lot quicker. So for the business world, it's absolutely amazing to bring that into it and to trigger it on demand and get into that state. Love it.
Yeah. And, that kind of contributes to what you were talking about with that marketing is that when you've got more of that dopamine, that dopamine rush, that's going to help you become a little bit more creative, right? I mean, that helps you
100%.
open up, seeing new ideas and things.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. That's one of its benefits that it actually does get the creative brain going and you just see and hear and you're open to more opportunities and they just come naturally because your intent is there and you're focused on the positive and it's a bit of a snowball effect, as you
Hmm.
build the momentum and the dopamine and the energetic side of it. You feel good, and people love being around people that are happy and motivated, and they're just like moths to a flame. They're attracted, and you can use that to your advantage in business to operate like that.
Yeah, and it makes being in business so much more fun because I mean we're going to
Yeah.
face challenges every single day, but when you've
Mm,
got more of a positive mindset and you're able to be creative and you're not feeling all of that stress, now
correct.
the challenges that we have, it's like, okay, give me the fight. I'm going to overcome this, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's minimal because you're just flying on a high. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, something else, that you mentioned in some of the information that you sent over, that's kind of related, I think, maybe to the dopamine hacking, but you have something that is called mindset stacking. Tell us a little bit about that. What does that look like? What does that entail?
It's sort of along the lines of where you the exciting thing I think with stress is that we can determine our own interpretation of that. So I like to stack my mindset so that everything that comes into my life, whether it's positive or negative, is interpreted in a positive outcome. So there's a little technique that I do whenever there's anything stressful, good or bad, particularly on the bad side of things, is we can reframe it. We have the choice to be able to take an event as, okay, this is really bad, this is terrible, I'm stressed, I'm upset, or we can say, all right, let's ask the right questions. So this event's happened. What have I learnt from it? So again, another question. What have I learnt from it? And what have I learnt from it that can actually take me forwards in life, in business and improve me? And where's the benefit? So if you think really, really deeply about a situation, then you can always find a lesson and a benefit. So they're the two really, really important things for mindset stacking when you're in business. So isn't that awesome that no one dictates the way that we have to respond to an event.
Hmm.
Um, Naturally, we're conditioned through family and genetics and society and all these sort of things, we're conditioned to respond to certain events in certain ways. But what if we could actually take a mind-blowing step back and say, well, actually, that response or that reaction isn't actually benefiting me or my business, it's not helping me move forwards. What would a different response be that I could get out of this and actually grow and significantly scale off the back of that super negative event? So
Hmm.
just a small change in the questioning can have a huge impact on how you relate to it and how you look back on it and how that negative event sort of escalates the future of your well-being. So I've got lots of those events that have been really stressful, but have now played a huge positive impact on the way that I look at things going forwards.
Yeah. And you can even translate that, that mindset stacking, not just into, necessarily like events that have happened. But I'm thinking of a conversation that I had today with a client that, they feel overwhelmed in their business. And it's like, oh, I can't add one more thing to my plate. And I
Right.
think, where my mind gravitated is the same way, same place where yours gravitated to is you're not asking the right question.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and like that's been ingrained in me, because I've studied a lot of Tony Robbins' stuff, and that's where I
Yes.
learned the concept. And
Yes.
when you ask the better questions, you get the better answers. And it's like, okay, why do I feel overwhelmed? How can I become less overwhelmed? And what can I do
Mhm.
to make this shift in my business that I need to? And I think a lot of that goes back to, again, we were talking about the dopamine hacking. A lot of that, so many times, and I found this in myself, like I'm very driven. And so when I'm working on something, like I want to get it to the finish line and like don't interrupt me, just let me keep working and I'll work, 12 hours straight. But that's
Yeah.
not always the best thing because we get worn down, we get stressed out, we get overwhelmed, whatever the feeling might be. But when we take short breaks, go out for into nature, go for a walk, go for a run. You like to do the cold baths. I haven't ventured into that realm yet, but kind of changing our state, so to speak,
Mm.
that
Mm.
can kind of then free us up, and then again that helps our mindset, right?
Absolutely. And Anthony Robbins talks about, the quality of our lives are directly determined by the quality of the questions that we ask ourselves. And
Hmm.
that, in a nutshell, I think it just can make a huge difference because we just go through life with our blinkers, trying to firefight, trying to keep up with day-to-day things without taking 2 seconds to step back and say, well, hang on, is this job even worthwhile? Is this going to take me in the direction that I want to go? Asking a whole bunch of questions. And I think using what and how questions are way better than using why questions.
Hmm.
So, what can I do that's different that'll make an impact? How should I do this so that we can make a difference? They're fantastic questions. You want to avoid the why questions of why is this always happening to me? Because it just gets you into a spiral of self-pity and doesn't move you any further. So understanding the questions and the power of them are awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, man, I mean, we've got so many different things that we could talk about. I'm looking at the list here of a lot of different stuff. Like, I'd love to learn more about, like your Shark Tank experience, because with I am on the board of a local program that we have for our high school juniors and seniors. It's called CEO, Creating Entrepreneurial Opportunities. And so every spring semester, the students that are in that program, they have to create an individual business. Or first in the fall semester, they do a class business just to kind of get their feet wet. And then in the spring semester, they do an individual business. And for their individual business, they have to do a regional pitch competition, which is a 3 to 5 minute presentation about their business. How much thought have you given into the research? And is this going to be profitable? Is it going to be viable? Is this really a business? And so they go to this pitch competition. And then they have a national pitch competition, which is just a 30-second, basically a commercial, basically the buy my stuff type of pitch. And so for the regional pitch competition this year, I gave them homework because I was their guest speaker to come in and kind of get them prepped up for the pitch competition. And I gave them homework and I said, I want you to watch 2 full episodes of Shark Tank because that is a real world experience of what you're going to be asked by the judges at this competition. So
Awesome.
we've got a few minutes here. Like, just give us a little soundbite of what you went on Shark Tank for, what that experience was like.
Yeah, cool. I was actually overseas when they were coming around Australia to do the auditions, and I was working on setting up some restaurants in Malaysia, but at the time, I missed the audition, and I really wanted to get on it, so I sent them I just filmed myself doing a pitch, and I sent it to them in an email and said, "Hey, any chance I missed the audition? Any chance I can get on?"
That
And
kind
they
of goes
said,
back to the hacking strategy on the marketing, right?
"Yeah, exactly, exactly." And they said, got your video. Yeah, I reckon if you fly to Melbourne, we still haven't done the. I'm in Western Australia, the other side of the country, so come over to Melbourne and do it live. Do a live pitch over there. So I did. 2 weeks later, they said, "Yeah, come on the show." And then uh, a few months later, we shot it in Sydney, and it was fantastic. I mean, talk about free marketing. That was phenomenal. That
Yeah.
we probably equate at least $100,000 worth of marketing to that alone.
Hmm.
And even now, in that was so I was pitching restaurants. I was doing. I'd built one restaurant and then I built another two after that. But
Hmm.
that was the concept that I was pitching, and that business has pivoted a little bit since then. But the exposure that gave us, and it's ongoing. People will still come up to us and say, "Hey, I saw you on Shark Tank," and it was brilliant because it just builds that trust and the rapport and the certain level of we get massive benefit from it.
Yeah.
And funny enough, when you were talking about your CEO for kids, I've done something very, very similar to that. I've built a financial literacy education course for school
Okay.
kids. So we might need to have a chat about that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, and in that they do the shark pitch,
Hmm.
and they do a very similar to yours. They have to build a market, a school market,
Uh-huh.
where they sell stuff, and then we teach them all about educate them on financial literacy and entrepreneurialism. And it's just amazing. There's such a lack of financial education that goes on. It just doesn't exist in the school world.
Yeah.
You learn about all this really important stuff, apparently, algebra and all these sort of things that are just going to be really essential for the rest of your life, but
Right.
we don't know about money and finances.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a bit strange. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and going back to the Shark Tank, I mean,
Yeah.
even the business, I've read stories where the businesses who didn't get offers from any of the sharks, their businesses saw a huge uptick
Yeah.
in, business because they, of this failure that they didn't get any sharks that, that wanted to invest, but you had the exposure. And so it was a real
Yeah.
win for them, even though, obviously it's probably devastating if you don't get any funding, from any of the sharks. So, yeah, a huge opportunity there. And so, kind of going back to, what we started with at the beginning, talking about, marketing, are there things that, avenues of marketing that you can leverage that can get you more exposure? Whatever that looks like in your local market, whatever that it is, for business owners to really think about what are some unique channels that we can, get out on, that maybe not everybody has an opportunity. I mean, Shark Tank, you have to, put your pitch in and you have to be accepted and you go through this process. So just kind of like being creative about that, I think is really important.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And there's so many opportunities. Again, it's back to how can I do this? Where are the opportunities? Asking those questions, looking for them everywhere. There's so many opportunities in business. You just have to create I find, I mean, as you can see, I've got a few businesses going on in the background.
Yeah, you're going to need a
Um,
bigger screen.
I think so. And I find, the problem is the shiny itis. I get a little bit carried away when I see an opportunity and a problem and a solution, finding a solution. Again, where the problems are, asking yourself the right questions of, well, how can I fix this and turn it into a business, and bring that on scale to the population, then that again, it's just a way of thinking. So, as far as what can I do that's a business that can scale my business and grow it, I think there's the mainstream marketing. I also love to do joint ventures,
Mhm.
and that's a huge part of what I do in every business. If you want to scale a business, joint ventures are phenomenal because they can be absolutely zero cost, and you're tapping into potential databases like we're doing now together. You know, you're tapping into mine, I'm tapping into yours, and together we grow. So databases are brilliant if you can joint venture with someone and tap into their database. Your offers of the joint venture have to be win-win-win. So they
Yeah.
have to be win for you, win for me, and win for your customers, whoever's database we're tapping into. So if you can create an amazing, juicy, sexy offer that just is just a no-brainer, then it opens the door for joint ventures, and you're much more likely to get a yes from the JV partner. So that's a great one. And
Yeah.
you don't have to go too far out of your comfort zone to get that one
Right. Yeah,
going. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. No, JVs are a great idea because they don't see enough businesses leveraging, that,
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
people's audiences. That can be a huge thing. And I remember doing that in my IT business, which is the first company that I had way in my early days. I partnered up with a local real estate agent, and that was a great opportunity for us to get some new clients that way. So
Brilliant.
glad that you
Brilliant.
brought that up. Well, Nathan,
Yeah.
we're really here at the end of our time. Is there anything you'd like to share in closing before we wrap up?
I think just briefly for any of the entrepreneurs out there, I think learn your marketing. Learn the lead generation side of it. Learn how to email properly and get in the inbox. All those things are just essential, and we don't spend enough time on lead generation and marketing. And if you do, like I try and spend about 80% of my day on that these days, on growing your business, and it's absolutely phenomenal. And if anyone wants, we love growing businesses. So if anyone wants, we connect once a month, free, completely free. You bring your biggest business hurdle that's preventing you growing, and we just chat about it. It's just a small little online intimate group, and we just chat through things. So if anyone wants to join that, love to nerd out with some business solutions.
Awesome. Where
Yeah.
can people find information about that?
NathanBaws.com, my website. Just come over
Okay.
there and register on that, and we'll connect. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. That sounds like a
Awesome.
great opportunity. So I'm hoping that many of you listeners will take advantage of that. I mean, you can see Nathan's, got a lot of experience, and he can help you ask the right questions, and really get to the bottom of what you're potentially struggling with, and help you kind of get some breakthroughs there. So encourage you to connect with Nathan on his website. We'll make sure that the link is in the show notes, but nathanbaws.com. And then he also has a podcast called the Bossom Podcast. So make sure that you check that out as well, because I'm sure that he's got a lot of great content on there along the topics that we talked about today. So if you're looking to supercharge your email marketing, be sure to check out my book, Hit the Inbox, at hittheinboxbook.com. It's packed with 76 pages of strategies to get your emails landing in inboxes and driving sales. Thanks for tuning in today. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite platform. It helps us reach more entrepreneurs like you. And until next time, keep crushing it in the trenches.